Well, I was wondering if I could indulge you for a few minutes here and see if you could open your mind up like a child and maybe we could all drop our preconceived notions of what we think light is. Now, we understand light to be electromagnetic in nature, and yet many of the greatest minds that gave us 100% of our electrical grid gave us indications that this couldn't necessarily be the case, although none of them ever came out and said what I'm going to say. They all gave those indications, especially Tesla, Faraday, Steinmetz, Oliver Heaviside. The notion of the wave-particle duality that the humanity suffers with is a complete fallacy. Obviously, light is partially so electromagnetic in nature, just as is all electromagnetic radiation, but that's also to state that transmission and the wheels of a car comprise the totality of the car, and it certainly leaves out the engine. The engine itself has been left out in light, and there's actually only one logical explanation for the nature of light, and that is that it has a third component. Light is not merely electromagnetic in nature with transverse electrical and magnetic composition, exactly like a coaxial cable. I don't know if you know the geometry of a coax cable. Everybody should, but it has an inner conductor. Okay? All transverse phenomena in the universe equal force and motion. Okay? Everyone. Electrical and magnetic. So this is electrical and this is the magnetic. Magnetic, electrical. Doesn't matter whether it's circular EM or it's radial EM, it doesn't make any difference. The same is true of the magnet. Every transverse reciprocating component is force and motion. This necessitates that there is a center radial perturbation in the field which constitutes the power, the actual power and nature of light. That means that there is a longitudinal radial field perturbation in light. Now, I'm not one that believes in descriptions. Descriptions are for children. Being a Neoplatonic Platonist, I only believe in explanations so far as helping out humanity or anybody in understanding something. I can describe something as having certain attributes, but so can a child. But that doesn't mean a child understands anything. A child can say, well, the car goes down the road, and I can see a transaxle that turns the wheels, and I can see a big body moving, but that doesn't explain a car, and it certainly leaves out the engine. And the engine of light is that z-axis, not the xy spatial force and motion, electrical and magnetic transverse components of light, but the engine, the actual z-axis radial dielectric pulse, which means that light is a trifold circuit. Okay? Our entire notion and understanding of light is based upon a fallacy. Einstein and others gave us this fallacy. Here's one truism that is absolutely undeniable by anybody in the world. Every age of science has always thought that it was correct. And every age of science, given a certain period of time in the future, was always proven wrong. This is an undeniable fact. It has always been true, and it always will be true. Now, let me quote Einstein for you, who is a fool. Speaking of light, he says, "We are faced with a new kind of difficulty. We have two contradictory pictures of reality. Separately, the particle and wave theory, neither of them fully explains the phenomena of light, but together they do." Now, he came up with an arbitrary concept called das Lichtquant, or light quanta, and actually denotated light as a wave-particle duality, just like an atom that has a nucleus and transverse electrical and magnetic components which make up, this of course would be, as in the case of light, would be the frequency and the wavelength of light, but this is the quote-unquote wave-particle duality. But Mother Nature, I forward to you, is not a cross-eyed crack whore. Mother Nature, for lack of a better term, is divinely simplex. Let me put a riddle to you right now. Over here we have incoherent light that's coming in from like my lights that I have right now. Over here we have coherent light. Now, we can certainly give a description of coherent light as having in-phase light transmission. However, is the case, even though lasers are in everything we use just about, nobody is actually given an accurate explanation as to why coherent light is so powerful. Now we say, well, it's in-phase light and that's why it's more powerful, but that's a description, that's not an explanation. If you look right here, we take an X wavelength and frequency of light, you'll see that the dielectric pulses are all in phase. Now, to give you a really simple analogy, this is like if you were to run fast through a field of sticks sticking up. You'd obviously mow them down pretty easily. But if you took all of those sticks and you bundled them into packs of 10 and wrapped them tightly, soon you would notice that you'd get really hurt and you'd be stopped really quick. Over here we have incoherent light. Obviously we have electricity and magnetism and the transverse components going everywhere, as well too are the dielectric pulses, which make up the center of the frequency and wavelength of light. Okay? This is all traveling. It's not actually traveling, but I'll get to that in a second. Traveling in a certain direction. Over here also. But here we have the energy component of light that is hitting you. Have you ever run into sheet rain versus rain? Like when you're actually driving down the road, the wind blows rain into piles and it'll actually hit the car in sheets. If you live in Florida like I do, you're familiar with sheet rain. It'll actually hit the car and it's like someone's actually pounding their fists on the windshield of the car. Boom, boom, boom. So you have to ask yourself, why would a 5-watt light bulb be absolutely worthless? Worthless to read by. I mean, just impossibly painful to read by. And yet a 5-watt laser aimed at you will burn a hole in your ass in very short order. As a person that collects some dangerous lasers, I can tell you that's certainly the case. Not that I've burned my ass. So you have to ask yourself, what is the nature of light? I mean, you're in photography. I mean, this may not interest you. It may bore the piss out of you. So what is the nature of light? Well, light cannot be transverse electrical and magnetic by its entirety of its nature in denotation. Now we know that light is certainly electromagnetic, but it has a z-axis radial dielectric component. All light does. This is the nature of light. Oliver Heaviside, by the way, invented the coaxial cable. He never stated that he understood the nature of light. Tesla gave some hints as to this fact, but nobody actually ever came out and said this until I wrote the book on same. The only true and accurate model of light that describes absolutely every phenomena of light, including the photoelectric effect, light coherency, everything, can only be explained by DTEM, dielectro-transverse electromagnetic. It means it is a trifold circuit. That which the idiot Einstein, let's take a look at one section of light here, okay? This is one, we're just going to look at one frequency and wavelength of light. This is the circuit. This is what humanity currently misunderstands as a wave-particle duality. Well, here we have the waves, we have the electrical component, we have the magnetic component, which are equal to F and M, force and motion. This is the particle component. Every transverse phenomena has a center point, just as every spiral has its center. The only reason a spiral exists, like a spiral galaxy, is because it has a center. We have light that is linearly and circularly polarized. Okay, this is the wave-particle duality, the spawn thereof. We think that light is electromagnetic, and it's not. It is literally a pinch in the fabric of the ether. Now, ether is one of the horrible words of current-day quantum physics because they don't like the word. But they've actually replaced it with something else because they know that explaining field and field theory, which they've never done, no branch of physics has ever explained the word field. This is the big dirty word. If you ever want to stump somebody, just ask them to explain this word. Field. They'll always get it wrong. That means they get an F- score because they can't explain this word field. Now let's get back to photography, the optics of photography. What actually happens? Well, as is the case, unlike our conception of things, when it comes to light, the smaller the space, the higher the capacitance. That's why getting into blue and purple, this end of the spectrum. You get tissue damage. Okay, now like an infrared, we have a larger frequency wavelength. Over here we have smaller frequency wavelength. But energy in EV goes up exponentially the smaller the space. And there's a reason for that. The smaller the space, if we look at a lens, this is a lens here, by the way, a photographic lens, okay? As the light passes through this lens, it has a higher capacitance. Let's say this is blue light and this is red light up here, okay? These are the dielectric pulses that the lens passes through. Here is the point of desired convergence right here. You'll notice that the blue light goes like this and the red light goes here right through a desired convergence. So what we have to do then is introduce Flint elements to cause recolumnation of the light. That's why every time you add one of these glass elements, you got another one, and another, and another, and another. Now this is why some of the older glass lenses, Nikkor, doesn't matter if it's Nikkor or Vivitar, who cares, they had very few elements. Now they do suffer some chromatic aberration, but they also don't distort the light greatly. That's just the nature of the beast. This light is recolumnated by a Flint element. It's interesting to understand the nature of light. I mean, we think of light coming from the sun, but you know, the light that's leaving the sun is going through infinite amounts of incredibly cold space. I mean, there's not heat that's shot from the sun. It's an ether perturbation. It's a perturbation. It's a field perturbation that mimics itself here on Earth. We feel the warmth from the sun, but there's no warmth coming from the sun. Okay, that light has traveled. It's actually not traveling. Light doesn't actually move, and I'll get that into a minute, and I'll have to go into a second video. Light doesn't actually move at all. It is an ether perturbation. There are pinches in the fabric of the field which give rise to transverse electrical and magnetic components. Let's look at a simple waveform here, which of course I didn't draw that very well. It's kind of hard to draw really good TEM, transverse electromagnetic. We have the z-axis radial dielectric component of light. Okay, here we have force and motion on either side. Remember that electricity is phi times psi. Electricity is a hybrid of dielectricity and magnetism. Okay, over here we have transverse components, whether it's linearly polarized or circular polarized, it doesn't matter. We have, in essence, right here, what the idiot Einstein called das Lichtquant, a light quanta, or a wave-particle duality. We have exactly the same thing we find in a magnet. Right here we have the dielectric inertial plane right along the center, which is exactly the same thing as the z-axis radial dielectric component of light. On either side we have transverse reciprocations of electricity and magnetism necessitated as created from a source origin. Now, exactly like a water droplet in a pond, I will go on to video number 2, and let's finish this up. And if you don't like this video, you can certainly skip it and the one that follows it, but photography is about light, and I thought some of you, anyway, it doesn't have to be all of you, but some of you might be interested in what is actually the true nature of light, and you will not read this anywhere else. But this is the only model of light which accurately, logically, simply, and irreducibly explains absolutely all observed phenomena of light. All of them. Okay, and there is no wave-particle duality. A duality is an inability of stupid human consciousness to understand the nature of what constitutes the components of light. Check out video number 2.